welcome back to another episode of the North Star Takes podcast. I'm Bailey Policki. He's Jacob Liberta. We're a Minnesota sports podcast. So if you're a Minnesota sports fan, please hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. And if you're a Wild fan, give this video a like because the Wild are slowly starting to get back on track here. Really solid win over the Boston Bruins on Wednesday night at the XL Energy Center. And, pretty solid goaltending performance out of Cam Talbot, which is good to see. He's actually won his last 4 games that he started, which is impressive. They played pretty much a complete game. They kind of let up a little bit in the second period, but what are your thoughts here, Liberta? I mean, they're slowly starting to figure it out. I mean, they haven't come completely out of their rut yet because Nashville kind of slapped them last Sunday, but what are your thoughts here as they're starting to win a couple games now? They're still in the thick of it in terms of being number 2 in the division behind Colorado. So what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, no, this feels like a win to write home about, quote unquote, because this is against a very quality opponent from the Eastern Conference and feels like more what we saw earlier in the season rather than what we've seen the last month. So That's promising. And I know we still got a little ways to go, and we're right in it. Even as bad as we feel like we've been playing and losing all these games right and left, we're still right in it, like you said, for second place in the division. I don't think that's too far out of reach. We just got to start stringing together some wins, especially when you have all these home games you got coming up. So realistically, I feel pretty good about that. And I didn't realize Talbot had even won his last 4 starts. That's kind of weird. I feel like he's slowly coming back. I mean, you're going to need him because this was what kept us in that series last year against Vegas and honestly all the way through the season when we had that weird schedule. But realistically, I think this is progress, but I still got to see a stack a few more wins together. I'd like to see 3-4 in a row, and then I'd feel like we're back.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, you got to take advantage of these home games because, I mean, this is an incredible stretch of 9 home games in a row. Basically, the whole month of March, you're at home here. So, yeah, I think there's definitely been encouraging signs. I think I'm still a little concerned about the defense. I mean, I'm still seeing some really sloppy play from guys like John Merrill, Goligoski, Kulikov, and I know these aren't like our top end defensemen either, but
still they got to play too much.
It's tough to see. Like defensemen, I think is almost becoming our number 1 need because I think those guys aren't doing the goaltenders any favors. And the goalies have been giving up some bad rebounds, especially Kakkonen lately. But I mean, if the defensemen aren't in the position to help them out, or if they're not covering the back door, and that's how all these teams are getting these easy goals on us, I mean, it's pretty disappointing. But Kaprizov's just been playing like a man with his hair on fire. He's up to 32 goals now. He's going to blow by Gabrick's single season record for most points in a season. So, I mean, the dude's just incredible. He keeps finding ways to amaze us. And he's even emerging as a little bit more of a leader now in the locker room as well. There's a good article on The Athletic that Michael Russo wrote about Kaprizov kind of emerging as a leader. The guys are kind of starting to gravitate towards him.
As they should.
Yeah, and he's gone into Evason's office a couple times and basically said like, "Hey, what can I do to make this team even better? How can I help more?" And those are all things you love to hear from him because he's a relatively quiet guy. Just because I don't, his English isn't the best still, so he doesn't speak in the media very often. But it sounds like behind the scenes he's a pretty good leader, and the guys love him. And I think that's a huge step for this team because you need your best player to be one of the leaders on the team.
Yeah, 100%. I don't think he can just be a passenger as far as leadership goes. I think that's huge, having your superstar, the guy that's really everybody, as far as fans or the rest of the league, really gravitates towards when they look at the Wild. It's like a Kaprizov now, so it's nice that he's obviously got the respect in that locker room really to really take charge and dig this team out of a rut if need be. I mean, he's been the one constant, and he's been very steady even over this bad stretch for the Wild. Like, you can always count on him, which is reassuring, but it's just bringing everybody else up to par with how we should be playing, and then things will start going right again.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, they already made one trade. They traded Nico Sturm for Tyson Jost from the Colorado Avalanche. Just kind of a 1-for-1, both trying to get a fresh start, see what they can find in either player. Kind of sounds like this Jost has some decently high upside. He was a 10th overall pick from UND. So, and he can play center, which is good. And it sounds like they think he might eventually be able to have the flexibility to play up on like the second line or something, maybe between Fiala and Boldy, or maybe they might even try and throw him up with Kaprizov and Zuccarello. Might not be this season, but maybe next season they'll try that or something. Yeah. But Do you think there's any other trades to be had here? Like Guerin kind of mentioned, he's not going to try and trade them out of their issues. Like he doesn't think they can solve their issues by trading. And he said he's not going to sacrifice anything. He's not going to do anything ridiculous, basically, to try and save this season. So, what are your thoughts? Do you think they still should try to pursue a trade, and what do you think they should trade for?
I don't know if it's worth it or not. Going back to this Tyson Yost thing real quick, I think this is actually a pretty good trade for the Wild. I know that it's obvious when Nico Sturm's a healthy scratch for us for a couple games, he's not a huge fan, or the coach isn't a huge fan of him then, so it's probably time to move on. And if he really has the upside to be a top 2 line center, then that's incredible, because I don't think Sturm was ever going to get to that point. So I think that's awesome. But as far as other trades to be had, I don't know. I don't think there's really anything drastic I would do. I kind of want to just let it play out and see what happens, just because we've taken a step back now to the point where I'm kind of questioning is like, what's the real team this year? Was it more what we were doing early on, or has it been the last month, or is it a little bit somewhere in between where it's not quite going to win a cup, but maybe you'll win a series or something like that? I don't know. You got to pick your spots, and you have the values there, obviously, but I wouldn't just make trades to make trades, because like Guerin said, I don't think one guy's going to come in here and fix our problems. I think it's a mental thing rather than an actual like talent-based thing where the team just can't play as well as the opponents they're playing every night. So.
Yeah, and like the Boston game, you could just tell they played with a different intensity, and that's why, like you said, I think it's mental, whether it's fatigue, whether it's just being in a rut. Like I guess I don't really know like what the issue has been, but they haven't been playing intense hockey. They haven't been finishing checks. They haven't been skating hard. They haven't been winning puck battles. All the little things that eventually turn into the big things. So yeah, I'm with you. It's like it's hard to know whether it's worth it or not to make a move. I would really like to get a bigger aggressive defenseman in here, but I just what it would take to get that, I have no idea. I feel like a goaltender is probably not a realistic option at this point, because I don't think they want to trade Talbot. And if you're going to get like a Marc-Andre Fleury or something, you're probably gonna have to trade a pretty decent draft pick, and that's just a rental too. So it's like, I don't know if any of that's really worth it. You might as well just kind of ride it out, see what happens, see if this team can find what they had earlier in the season, get hot going into the playoffs, and maybe they can make some noise.
Yeah, if you're going to trade for a goalie, I think that would have been done weeks ago, when really we didn't have a steady footing, especially when Talbot was down in the dumps and he couldn't play. Like, you couldn't throw him out there. Like, that's probably the time. And now, but there's not enough games left, it feels like, to make it worth it, to the point where you'd get a guy in a groove and going into the playoffs. I don't know if that's super realistic. So probably just worth rolling as is. And yeah, I guess that's just the state of things right now.
The good news is that the Wild are still second, or not second. They're third in the division, but they're the Blues are only a few points ahead, and we still have a game in hand. So I mean, it's certainly within reach. They got some moves to make here, and then I mean, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But how they finish the month of March and then go into early April is really going to be the litmus test for where this team's going to be to finish the season.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's critical to just keep building momentum, and I'm having a hard time envisioning right now winning any, or I should say winning a lot of meaningful games to be a true cup contender this season. But you never know. Mm-hmm. I mean, they played like early on. They just got to find that form again. That's most important.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other final thoughts from you before we take off here about the Wild?
Yeah, I would say just take advantage of home games. I think that's going to be the biggest indicator here. That's why right now is a very critical stretch for them. And if we can start stacking wins, find 3-4 wins in a row, then I'll start feeling good again. But for now, I think I'll have a pause for any real optimism for now.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it'd be really nice to see them. You said 3 or 4 games, but I think in order to make up the ground they kind of lost, I think it'd be really good to get on another 6, 7, maybe even another 8-game win streak, which isn't going to be easy because they have these little, they have difficult games that are kind of thrown into the mix here in their schedule. But
that's true.
I think that's what it's going to take if you really want to get comfortable getting back second place in the division, because St. Louis hasn't been lighting the world on fire. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they handle it. But I'm sure there'll be a playoff team, whether it's wild card or one of the top 3 teams in the division. I'm sure they'll get in somehow, but it'll just be interesting to see how they finish out. So
absolutely.
That's going to do it for this edition of the North Star Takes podcast. Please be sure to like this video and hit the subscribe button. Feel free to give us a follow on both Twitter and Instagram and leave your comments below. What are your thoughts on the Wild? Do you think they need to make a trade before the deadline? Do you think they should just stand pat and see what they have? And do you think it's worth it for this team to, make a trade, or do you think they're not quite good enough to put that type of investment in? So until next time.